I have a core belief on costs, because I ran a company just like you did, or for many years, and when I started looking at, well, why, what are the major costs in my company, and then when we started looking at things like sales operations costs, like how long it takes us to generate a quote, how long does it take us to do like basic things? Hey, my customer wants a quote and it's taking me 2 weeks to turn around. Why does that take 2 weeks to turn it around? Like what's the problem? And the
Right.
customers are doing the same thing. Like, what the hell's wrong with you? I know in a 2 hour window, like when my toilet paper is going to arrive at my house, and I'm asking you for a quote, and you can't even give it to me. I can go online and I can buy a pizza, and I get better tracking on my pizza than I do a computer that I order from your company,
Right.
right? So like something's got to really change. But for me, I boiled it down to the reason that we had a lot of these service costs, if you will. By that I mean humans doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, was really boiled down to one thing, and it really was a lack of connectivity, which is really kind of funny to think about, because we're selling connectivity as companies. But the actual source of our expense was really because of lack of connectivity. And by lack of connectivity, I mean between the tools that we were using. And so we have a manual process that we have to like carry things through or call somebody to do something.
Mhm.
And then we also had this lack of connectivity with the partners that we were working with. Because if you think about something like in Ingram Micro or a TD Synnex or a Pax 8, which was, your background, a lot of the actual ordering and quoting and pricing and stuff is still done in spreadsheets and PDFs in 2024. It's still being done with those methods. So the source of primarily, I would argue that the source of cost is really is humans. It's all the manual work that we have to do, and I believe that manual work is caused because our stuff's not connected together.
Yeah. So how do you do it? I mean,
Yeah,
the fact of the matter is, I always bring up cost because we know that MSPs are cost conscious, and I
yeah,
always say that I always try to explain, hey, let's not be so cost conscious based on just the price. We should be cost conscious based on efficiencies, right?
right,
That's
right,
and
right,
I mean, when I was doing the MSP thing again, part of running my head against the wall was until I figured out, holy crap, if I could just be more efficient, I'm not worried about these costs over here, and I'm not
right,
chasing. Plus, I'm not also in a race to the bottom, always worried about the price when I know I can charge customers for my services better when I'm more
right,
efficient, right?
right.
So,
Yeah,
I get that part of it. I always point to that first though to see where it's going from a standpoint of price, and you actually started to steer it towards more of, hey, what about these efficiencies, right? So how
yeah,
do you do it? How do you take MSP like myself with all those tools,
yep,
and what
yep.
are you going to do? How are you going to take me from I'm frustrated, I'm freaking out to this streamlined process that you're talking about?
Well, the first thing we did, so I think there's kind of two parts to it. So the first thing is you're asking a little bit about the product and how do we do it, and
Yeah.
the answer first is, if you look at a lot of the systems that have been in the world for a long time, and they're very, very valuable. I'm not disparaging those. Like ConnectWise, Autotask, those systems are very, very valuable, still necessary in the world today. And we're not pitching like replacing those. RMM and ITSM software, 100% necessary. And there's some really modern versions of that, like SuperOps and Ninja One, and a lot of these Atera and all these like really cool, like modern kind of RMM platforms. Very, very necessary, very, very cool. But what we did when we built our platform is we said, the first problem that we have to solve is we need to build a stack that's API first. And we need to figure out how do we digitally connect all the partners that we're working with and all the apps, in other words, tools that we're using as, MSPs and also VARs. And I lump everybody in kind of the same kind of category. And that was actually what we had to solve first. And by the way, that was a multi-year pain in the ass process,
Right.
because we had to build some inroads, and a lot of the apps, we had to build inroads or connectivity to things that people are already used to. Like you can go to Pax 8, and Pax 8 did a great job with API first. They were one of the great digital distributors that did all that, and that. And then Ingram and TD Sync, a lot of the other ones, they've done that too. So they're kind of really catching up on that, and offering some really cool things we can integrate with. And so that gets you integration with partners, and then we had to integrate with essentially all the tools. And so the first problem we had to solve is how do we tie this like fragmented market together? And then if you're thinking about your as the TSP or the MSP, what you're doing, if you think about your workflows, like in a, if you just took like put it all on a whiteboard and you would say, well, what are the things that I'm doing? Well, I have to sell, pretty important. Perhaps the most important is I have to be able to sell stuff.
Right.
Then I have to be able to fulfill things. I have to be able to order it after I install it. I have to be able to put the equipment in buildings, all that kind of stuff. Then I have to be able to manage that. And then I have to be able to finance my business or fund all that growth and things like that. And those are the four major workflows that we really honed in on, because we said we have to build an all digital workflow. So back to my original premise hey, we want to build the AWS of networking. If you go back to Jeff Bezos in the early 2000s, he put a directive out of his company and he said, we're going to be API first on everything. And if you're not API first on everything, and this is inside Amazon, you won't work here anymore.
Right.
We kind of said, well, if the industry really should function that way, somebody's going to have to build this connective tissue to tie all these things together. And so that's really what we did first. And then the second part, which answers your pricing and question, is then what we started to do is we started to take these workflows and we started to just build them and think about how could we build this in a digital way. So instead of calling the distributor and asking where my shit is, which is what everybody does, could we just put that in an interface, pull in real-time pricing and availability so that the service provider or the VAR or the MSP could just know all the time where the stuff is? And then could they pass that information on to their customers so their customer knows where all their stuff is, right? These are all things that we have when we order pizza and toilet paper. And I believe that customers are demanding that or should be demanding that from, MSPs and VARs.